All right, guys, so what's a slide ski? A slide ski is an object that goes over the bottom corner of your slide to help protect it. So people use them for a couple of different reasons. The number one reason is that when your slides go in and out, most RV manufacturers today, instead of putting them on rollers or anything, they use wear bars. And the wear bar is like a slick piece of plastic on top of this bar that's underneath the slide, and it just kind of moves over the top of it. Now, the issue with that is if you use your RV a lot, especially if you use your slides going in and out and moving your camper and that kind of stuff, I guess it's not as big of an issue if you're set up at the lake and it just stays there all the time. But one thing that happens is this Darko material that's on the bottom of the slide, that wears out. And it tends to wear out at the bottom edge of the slide. Now what happens with this, and the biggest issue here, a lot of manufacturers are actually starting to try to take care of this at the factory and kind of help there, which is a good idea. But the issue with this slide mechanism is obviously you're going to have wear and tear because you're just sliding things on top of each other. There's no moving parts. It's the plywood and the Darko material on the slide moving across this piece of plastic. And so that causes wear and tear. It's not going to hurt the hard plastic, so it's going to start tearing holes in this Darko material. And that usually happens under the edges. Now, like I say, when that happens, so water comes down the side of the slide, okay? So when it comes down the side of the slide, there's no like harsh angle there that's a good drip edge. Essentially, first it hits the trim bar. And the trim bar, it usually a lot of times just kind of goes around and follows the trim bar to the bottom corner of the slide. And when it gets to the bottom corner, it's still not a great drip edge there. So what happens is you have these areas that wear out in the Darko material. That water comes down on the side, and instead of just falling straight off of the corner, it has a tendency to kind of come underneath the edge and then drop down. Now with that, and you mix it in with that Darko material wearing off, what happens a lot of times is it drips down there, it goes under the bottom of the slide, and instead of falling off, then it wicks into the wood, into the plywood there, which is more of like a chipboard, and it just soaks it right up there and it causes rot. Now I can tell you that this is a very common problem. My friend Steve over at Shelburne RV, every time I go over there, they have a slide tore out of a camper that they're rebuilding. Now when they rebuild it, they do what I really think that the factory should do. Now what they do is they get the metal roofing material after they rebuild the slide, and that metal roofing material is flat, so it's before that they put the grooves and stuff on it for roofing, and they bend the corners up, so it's like a big U-shaped piece of metal, and essentially that gives it a slicker surface on the bottom. It gives it a surface that's protected from the elements. There's no way water's going to wick up into that. Shouldn't rust because it's, you know, today's modern metal roofing, it's got like coatings and stuff on it. They usually use the one that's like painted white so it doesn't show up a whole lot. And then the corners go up under the trim bars there, and you're completely covered. Now the issue with that is there's no real good way to do that and still have the slide attached. So you really have to remove the whole slide in order to do that. So like talking to my friend Steve, it's like, how would you fix this? And they're like, well, all we do is like repair it after the damage is done. And so we don't really ever think about like how to fix it beforehand. So there's a few different options here. The few different options are prefabricated slide skis. Those have their pluses and minuses. They have like a shape at the end that goes up. And so if you have a flat slide, that can cause a little bit, it just doesn't fit right in my opinion. And then people also use just like angled aluminum or angled plastic. I did use some angled plastic and I had an issue with that, and we'll get into it in just a minute. And so I kind of alluded to this a while ago, but I'm going to show you more of what not to do here. Other people also use like, they have somebody make them like some stainless steel slide skis. I think that would be the way to go personally, but those are just some different options for you. So let's talk about some pros and cons to each type of ski solution here. So you have the plastic ones that are pre-made, and with the plastic ones, I think that they're almost, you know, where they need to be. Like I say, sometimes the shape's not that great. In my entertainment slide right here, I have a completely flat slide. I will say that they do have a lip on the end after they kind of curve up. And it's very important to, with whatever you do, to use that lip on the end to attach it to the front of the slide, because that's going to help give it more holding power when it's trying to come in, and like not pull off or not damage your floor, because it's not going to try to dig into the floor. Now, the other big issue with those plastic slides to me is that the inside portion of those usually just attaches with some double-sided tape. You know, this area has a lot of weight on it. Truthfully, I guess they say those shouldn't move around too much. Personally, I don't like the tape. So if I did it, I would probably use like some adhesive that's going to stick to the Darko material and to that plastic, but that's just me. Now the other option that a lot of people use is just like that angled plastic or angled aluminum, like I said earlier. Now, truthfully, I used the angled plastic, and I thought, oh, I can take care of this. It's not going to be an issue. And so I didn't take it all the way to the front of the slide. That's big thing number one for you guys to understand, is you want to take it all the way to the front edge of the slide, no matter what you do. I thought I had it long enough. Essentially, you just really need it past the wear bar. But after I started messing with it, and I put the slides all the way back out, it was right at the edge of the wear bar. And so it worked really great when I was putting it out, as smooth as butter. And when I tried to put it back in, it started binding. Some pieces of the plastic broke off. It was a big mess. Don't do it. So just don't do it. All the way to the front of the slide. Just trust me. All right, so like I was saying, my plan was to take this extruded plastic that was just in an L shape, an angled piece of plastic, and attach it to the bottom. So I thought I was doing my due diligence here. The first thing that you have to do when you do this project, you have to remove the trim bars on the side. So when you remove the trim bars, you take all the screws out, and then it's usually got like some butyl tape behind it, you pry it off. Now when you take all the screws out from the outside, then you got to go inside and you got to pull the slide in about 4 or 6 inches, because there's usually a screw there on the inside that the wall blocks that you can't get to. So after you pull those trim bars out, and you can put the slide back out, or you can leave it just like 4 or 6 inches inside. It's not going to hurt anything. Then you got to lift the slide up so that you can put whatever you're working with in that hole, right? So what I ended up doing was using a couple of jacks and some 2x4s to make like a T. Now I'm also going to tell you, be very careful with this, because it can fall and it can hurt you, because and we won't talk about that right now. Anyway, so you want to make sure that especially this vertical piece of 2x4 is as vertical and plumb as possible, and you put it on a jack, and then the upper 2x4 just kind of distributes the lifting force across the slide. And so just jack it up a little bit. You want to be mindful of like the top corner, because you don't want to hit the roof of the slide onto the top of the camper opening. But usually you can get about an inch or so of lift on that. So you lift up both sides, and you also, where you're lifting that, you probably want to be like set in, so that way you can still put the ski on there. So you probably want to go in like 6 or 8 inches, depending on what you're using for the slide ski. All right, so we get it jacked up, and then I ended up using some adhesive, which in this case probably wasn't a good idea because my plan already failed, which I told you. First, I did use some underbelly tape around the corners to protect it where it's all worn off. I was kind of going back and forth about that with my OCD, because it's like, if I'm going to use the adhesive, then it's just going to stick to this tape. Or what if this tape doesn't stick well? And I probably overthought that way too much, but I did decide to cover it with some tape first. And so then what you should do is go inside to the front. Now I have like some trim blocks. I still got to finish these up a little bit, but I didn't want to remove them. That's why I was trying to get away from this, because my very first time that I ever put the slide in and out, I have some drawers in my camper that stick behind the slide if you're not careful, and I tore the drawer open. I tore the trim off of the slide, and this block on the bottom got completely destroyed. First time I ever used it, which I used what tools that my dad had in his barn, and I rebuilt that block. So I didn't really want to mess with that stuff again, so I was being kind of lazy here, which is what caused all my problems. Can't be lazy. It's a lot of work. So essentially what you're going to do is you're going to get whatever material you decided to use, which we're still talking about the angle plastic. So I was putting it in from the outside. It's a lot easier to put it in from the inside. You just go inside the floor and you slide it all the way under the slide till it hits the back. And then you can see where you need to trim it, because you're going to have to go around some flanges and stuff there towards the inside of the slide. But it's not a huge deal. If you're using the pre-made slides, then the part on the inside is the one side you're going to want to keep. You're going to want to trim the back side. So essentially you just need a measurement, which you can stick your tape measure through there. You're probably going to need some help, all the way out to the outside of the slide to make that as long as possible. And then what I did is like I said, I put it in from the outside. I did it wrong, but I glued it on there, and then I used the jack. I let the jack down and I moved it over on top of that piece of plastic, jacked it up, so that way the glue would dry with good holding force, which is probably my mistake now. Anyway, that's what I did. I went ahead and put the trim bars back on, and I did put some new butyl tape behind that, and I let everything dry for 24 hours. Well, that's when I went inside and I tried to put the slides. I put them out, everything worked great. Tried to put them back in. Pieces of plastic were popping off of it. It was a big mess. So then I was stuck, because I was in Michigan. I was trying to figure out what to do. I was talking to my friend Steve over in the Keystone Owners Group, and he used some type of decking composite component from Home Depot for his slide ski. Says that he likes the way it works and works fine for him. I actually tried to find that. I couldn't find it. I'll show you a picture of what he's talking about here. But I went to Home Depot. I was like, what can I use for a slide ski? Because I'm going to have something that goes all the way inside. And then I was thinking, if I'm going to take the blocks and stuff off, I do want something that comes up over the front of the edge of the slide. That way you have this corner here, and that smooth corner is not going to dig into the floor. Now we do use the slide skis that actually sit inside the camper, so I wasn't as worried about that like when I was just trying to put the straight pieces of plastic on there. But if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right, because Daddy always said, if you ain't got time to do it right the first time, then how are you going to find time to do it again? And I always hated that, but apparently it's true, because it shines true in situations like this. So I walked around Home Depot for a while trying to find anything that I could use for a good slide ski here. Essentially the things that you're looking for, you're going to want it to be, you're going to want something with a 90-degree angle on it. You're going to want it to be smooth, and then I really wanted to have that front lip on there. So I looked at a bunch of different stuff. I actually almost decided to use a piece of vinyl gutter, and then I was just going to trim it on the corners, on the opposing corners. And whenever I trimmed it with the opposing corners, then that would give me a piece of L-shaped plastic there that I could leave longer. But I ended up I was looking at the gutter stuff there, and I found some aluminum, and it was some aluminum trim that went with some gutters. and it had a little bit of an edge on there that I was going to have to trim off, which wasn't a big issue. I just used some tin snips to cut along that and make it the correct length, and that wasn't bad at all. I will say the bottom portion of that had a couple of like indentions in it, but I figured once you put the weight of the slide on there, those were just going to flatten out and not be an issue. So what I ended up doing here is, because I wasn't going to get that plastic off, I was like, I guess that's going to stay on there, and we're just going to put something over the top of it. So I used more of the adhesive. I cut these down. I got the measurements. On the inside, I did bend them up. I got some metal pliers that were longer on the ends. I think they're usually used for welding. I'm not sure what they're called. And I bent the edge up. And so that way I would have that lip that I was talking about that I wanted. So I did all that, and I had trimmed the edges a little bit. Got it all in there the way that I wanted it to. And then I let that adhesive dry for 24 hours like I did the time before. Now, after I did that, I did go ahead and put the turn bars back on. I didn't change the butyl tape because I just put it on the day before, and it still seemed pretty moist on there, and so I think that it's going to seal just fine. I also went over it afterwards with some Chem-Link sealant, and so that shouldn't be an issue at all. Now, I did also change those screws out for stainless steel screws, which I think is going to be better because they're not going to rust like the screws that were there. But I will say those stainless steel screws, I use like 2-inch ones so I could get real good contact there in case there was a little bit of rod or something there, but I didn't feel any. But the heads on those screws stripped out really easily, so you got to be careful with that because it's got to be a small enough screw where it fits into the turn bar, and you want one with a rounded head on it. Now, all that being said, I waited 24 hours later and I went to put the slides in, and my entertainment slide, it was acting wonky and it was getting on my nerves. Well, I figured out my rack and pinion slide here. I did enough stuff with it that I changed, I had to adjust it like vertically up and down a little bit. So I checked the measurements because I used a video that I found from Lippert, which I'll post in the description and up here. But with that video, it shows you how to adjust the slide. So I did that. Now this slide is smooth as butter. Now I'm going to tell you guys, I'm always completely transparent with you. If something doesn't work, I tell you it doesn't work, okay? So the plastic didn't work, okay? Now my larger living room slide, I will say it kind of still has some issues, like it's a little bit jumpy when it goes in and out. It's a cable slide. Also during this, before I went with this route, I had ordered some slide rollers to put in because I wanted to take some of the weight off of the wear bars there, and I was thinking if I held it up a little bit with the rollers, then it's going to work better. I did go ahead and put the rollers in, and I'm going to have a whole separate video on that. But my entertainment slide, like I said, it's a little jumpy at first. I think that with all of these layers of things, I have it a little bit too wide, and I don't really care for it that much. But after it comes in like 6 or 8 inches, it's smooth as butter the rest of the way. So I'm not got all the tweaks worked out of it, but it won't rot and I won't have to replace the slide, and that's what I was going for. So my goal is achieved. It works, but it's not as good as I would like it. All right guys, so thanks for watching this video. I would say that if I was to do this again, I probably would have somebody make me these slide skis out of stainless steel. Somebody in one of my groups, they had someone make them some custom ones, and I think that that's going to work great, especially if you have them bend the ends up so you got that lip on the end. You know, this is a imperfect solution to the problem, but it is a solution. A lot of people, like I say, have problems with the plastic slide skis. A lot of them kind of tear off or fall down, and it's just one of those things that you talk to a lot of like RV techs and stuff, and they're like, I'd rather have Airstream or something like that doesn't have slides because they are a lot of maintenance and issue, but they do afford you like a lot more space on the inside, which is why they're there. But like I say, it's one of those things. But thanks for watching the video. Thanks for being a part of our family here. We'll go over those slide rollers here in a little bit and show you how to do that and how to not do that, because I've got examples of both. So we'll get into that shortly. Thanks guys for being around. Hit that like and subscribe button if you got anything out of this video.
Do not forget to hit that subscribe button.